Hey everybody. So before we go over diatonic function again, do the part 2 of diatonic function that I'd mentioned at the end of episode 3, we need to talk about minor scales first and then a couple other topics. Minor scales are the other important half to major scales, the natural minor scale to begin with. And the reason for that is it exists within the scale that we've already been talking about. Uses the same notes, has the same chords, but we're focusing on a little different note. And that note is A, which if you remember from your intervals or even from the scale, you know it's the sixth degree or the sixth interval of the C major scale. It's the major sixth interval. So if you start on that note instead of starting on C, but then use all the other notes, the same ones anyway, as the C major scale, that'd be A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and then back to A, or A is our octave. You have the A minor or A natural minor scale. And you can do that with pretty much any major scale. So just as we've talked about before, you can take any major scale. If you take the whole step, half step pattern, start on any note and build a major scale. And then if you take the sixth note in that scale and just start there, think of that as home, then so just like we did with the major scale, we're going to look at the minor scale, how it's built in whole tones and semitones or whole steps and half steps. We're going to take a look at the intervals and how you can build it from an interval standpoint. And then we're going to look at the chords, which are the exact same chords as C major, but now that we're focusing on A as our root or our home note or chord, in this case A minor, those other chords are going to have a different kind of relationship. And then it's also going to relate differently back to C as well, if you want to kind of go back and forth between C major and A minor. All right, so if we start on A, and we go a whole step to B, half step to C, whole step to D, whole step to E, half step to F, whole step to G, and then a whole step to A. And that's our step pattern of whole steps and half steps, or whole tones and semitones. So whole, half, whole, whole, half, whole, whole. Just like that. So if we're looking at the minor scale from an interval standpoint, starting on A, that's our 1 now. We go up to B, which is our major second. C is a minor third. D is a perfect fourth. E is a perfect fifth. F is a minor sixth. G is a minor seventh. And then A, of course, is our octave. So take our C major scale. If we start on the sixth note, which is our A, let's count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's our minor or our sixth degree. It's a major sixth degree, but that's where our minor scale starts. So then if we continue that, we get a minor scale. We get the A minor scale. And using A as our root note. So now if we take the A minor scale and we start on our third degree there, we get back to our major scale because it's all the same notes. Both scales share the same notes. It just depends on whether you focus on C as the root or home, or you focus on A as root or home. So that and how you use the notes and the chords in relationship to those two particular notes, in this one set of notes anyway, that will determine whether you are playing in a minor or a major kind of feel. So you know in C major we have the chords C, D minor, E minor, F, G, A minor, B diminished, and C. So if we do the same chords as C major, but starting on A, we get the A minor scale, and we get a unique sound when we just think of A as our home. So we have the chords A minor, B diminished, C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, and back to A minor. So using the A minor chord as a starting point and then also as the ending point, making it the focus here, using the same exact chords, that actually sounded a lot darker, a lot dimmer than when we just started on C and ended on C. So when we talked about a chord progression, a particular one, the 1-4-5 in C, we said that was the most common chord progression. It's the most common set of chords. Those chords, their individual notes form up the notes of the C major scale. They do the same thing in the minor scale as well, but with a different set of chords. So starting on C, that's our 1. Then we go to our subdominant, F. Then we go to our dominant, G, which wants to take us back to C, or home. So all those notes in each of those chords made up the C major scale. And if we start on A this time, our A minor, and call it 1, then our 4th is going to be D, just D minor. It's our subdominant. And then E minor, is our dominant. Back to A. So, whole set of different chords, all minor, whereas in major, they were all major. It's still the same progression if we count A as our 1. It's still a 1-4-5 progression, but now this time it's in A minor. And it's all minor, and all the notes of each of those chords build up the A minor scale, or the C major scale. But in this case, we're looking at it from the point of A. A minor is our 6th chord in C. It's now our 1. We have D, D minor. It's now our 4 chord. It used to be our 2. And then we have E minor, which is our 5th. It used to be our 3rd in the major scale. And back to 1, or 6th in the major scale. So G is now our 7th in minor, but it used to be our dominant. And if you remember, 5 and 7 kind of play that dominant role in resolving back to 1, or in this case to our 6th, if you're still looking at it from a C major point of view, but it's our 1 in minor. So the G, although it's the 7th, it still serves the same dominant function as it did in C major. It's just in a different position. So whereas our 7th in C was the B diminished chord that wants to take us back home to C, G also served the same function, the dominant function, taking us back to C very nicely. Both are acceptable. So if we went from G to A minor in a C major sense, that would be typically described as the deceptive cadence. Because in C, you want to go after the 5th, you want to go back home to C. But if we went to A minor and we're still working in the terms of C major, that would be a deceptive cadence. In this case, it still serves the same function as dominant if we look at it from an A minor point of view. So the resolution there is still pretty nice. So the circle of fifths, if you start on C, which is usually at the top, and you go around in fifths, so let's do that. The fifth of C is a G. There's our G. And the fifth of G is a D. And the fifth of D is an A. And then the fifth of A is an E. And then the fifth of E, I'm going to start back up here on the low note. It's our low E string. And the fifth of A sharp is F. And then guess what the fifth of F is? Starting back here again on our low string, first fret. It's our F, low F. Its fifth is C. So we made it all the way back around to C, going in fifths. Now, if we went backwards from that, we'd be going in fourths. So, why do I tell you this? The circle of fifths, and we're just going to kind of lightly cover it right now. We'll cover it more in detail and what you can do with it and how you can look at it later. But the circle of fifths is typically used to modulate with. It shows you the next kin of keys to modulate to, and it shows you the keys, essentially. There's 12 major keys, and there's 12 minor keys. So just like we're talking about A minor is our relative minor to C major, and C major is our relative major to A minor. So the minor keys are usually displayed in the middle of the circle, and the major keys are displayed on the outside of the circle. So C and A minor both of those keys have no sharps, no flats. And as you go around the circle in a clockwise manner, it will show you how many flats or sharps are in a particular key, and it shows it to you in order. So if we go up to G, which has a relative minor of E, G major, E minor, both of those keys share one sharp. And then if we go up to D, we have two sharps. And if we go up to A, we have three sharps. And go to E, we got four, and so on and so on. And if you go backwards, starting from C, you got one flat, and that's an F. And then it continues on and on. So the circle of fifths can be a good tool to show you, how many accidentals, sharps or flats, that you have in a key. And if you modulate keys, say we want to move from C, C major to another key, such as G, that's a typical modulation. It just has one note change in it. It's one of the easiest modulations to perform. That would be the order that you go in. So another important use of the circle of fifths, to me anyway, when I was starting out on guitar a few years ago, about 10, 11 years ago now, for me, I was, which I still am, I'm a big rock guy. I like rock and metal, stuff like that. And the big chord to use in a lot of that music is the power chord. And that's why a lot of people think it's real simple, especially in metal music. The simplicity can be there for rock music in a lot of ways, punk music, stuff like that. But even in metal, it's a common staple. It's a common use because when you're playing with high distortion, just having two notes that sound powerful together, that sound bigger than one note, and has the kind of it kind of puts on a facade as being a chord, but it's not. It's just an interval, the one and the fifth. And that's a D5, what we'd call a power chord. But as I've explained before, it's not really a chord, but put a lot of volume, a lot of distortion behind it. It makes a big, huge sound. It's very powerful. So one way that I learned all of my fifths, where all my power chords were, was obviously by the shape. I mean, you can take that shape there and just move it anywhere. That's open, so that's our open E to a B. And then, of course, you can also add the octave in. It's just the fourth right below this finger here. It's your pinky, anyway. You can take that and move that anywhere. And the circle of fifths was really the way that I learned, what my fifths were for each of those chords. If I took my first finger and I stuck it anywhere, then I knew what the fifth was, by the shape, and then also the note name, simply by, memorizing the circle of fifths. Well, what is it for A? Well, it's an E. E is my fifth of A. If I place my finger on F sharp, its fifth is C. So that was kind of a gateway, or C sharp, excuse me. It's F sharp, C sharp, F to C. But anyway, the circle of fifths was kind of my gateway into understanding, what the fifths were for each note. And then it helped me really quickly to kind of figure out where the notes were on the fretboard. Just knowing where my hand was at and knowing, what position I was in. If I started on any particular note, if I could find the fifth starting out, at an early age, just into rock and heavy music, that was really helpful. But it can help you in other music too. It can just help you in understanding your instrument, understanding the guitar, and understanding where to get a grip on how to start or where to start. There's two other minor scales that we need to talk about besides the natural minor scale. Two other very common minor scales. And then we also need to focus on one other natural minor scale that is unique, or is going to be unique to us when we talk more about chords and how they relate to one another in a chord progression. It's going to help us in our Understanding Diatonic Function Part 2 video. But right now, the other two minor scales that I want to talk about besides the natural minor in brief detail is the harmonic minor and the melodic minor scale. So if we start on our A, we have our A natural minor scale. Now, in harmonic minor, if we raise the seventh, we have the harmonic minor scale. That's a G, which is our seventh. I'm going to raise it one semitone to G sharp. That's one semitone or one half step. So A natural, A harmonic minor. So it has a bit more of an exotic kind of sound to it. The next scale is the melodic minor scale, which does the same exact thing as the harmonic minor, but we're going to raise the sixth as well. So starting on A, this is our A natural. We said G was our seventh. That makes F our sixth. So we're going to raise it to an F sharp. So that's our melodic minor scale. So really, no matter what scale we use, as long as we have a home note or a root note that can reflect back to minor or major, depending on how we use the notes around it or the chords around that particular note, that reflects what key we're in. It's either going to be a major or minor key with some note, C, A, B, D, F sharp, whatever. You can use a variety of scales that start on that particular note that do not necessarily relate back to the major or minor scale that key represents, but we still refer to it as that particular key. So A major or a C major, A minor, those are our keys. That's a key of no sharps, no flats. But if we do a melodic minor or a harmonic minor, we now have accidentals that are outside of the key. Harmonic minor has one sharp, melodic minor has two sharps. But since A is still our root note or our home note, and everything else that we do within that scale or that key refers back to that A, it's essentially a minor scale still, and it's a minor key relationship. So the next scale that we're going to talk about is another natural minor scale. We're going to start on the same note as we have with C. So using C again to try to keep it simple. Instead of doing C major, we're going to do C minor. This yields two separate keys, a whole separate set of chords, and a whole separate set of notes, but it uses the same step pattern, the same interval steps as the minor chord or minor scale, because it is a minor scale. But it has a whole different set of chords, and it has a whole different relationship to C. So if you have a major scale and a minor scale that share the same root note, and in this case that's C, we call those parallel major, parallel minor keys. Or the parallel key. So the parallel to C major is C minor, and the parallel to C minor is C major. Have a whole separate set of notes, different kind of chords, but they share the same root. And so what this does is it creates an interesting contrast, especially from the harmonic function or diatonic function point of view, to where you've got a whole different set of chords that give you some different tensions to work with, and give you some different sounds that are kind of outside of the key, but can work really, really well with whatever chord progression that you're using, and how you use those different chords from the other key or the parallel key in this case to get the sounds that you're looking for. They can be very exotic. They can have a stronger tension in some areas depending on how they're used. And we're going to cover this more in diatonic function part 2. That'll be the next video. So I just wanted to mention that, being that we're talking about minor keys or minor scales. We have the natural minor scale, which we learned about in A, and then the other two we learned about in A as well, the harmonic minor and melodic minor, which we'll cover a little more in depth later at a later point. And then we have the parallel minor, which is just another natural minor scale, but one that starts on the same note as its parallel major. So in the next episode, it'll be diatonic function part 2. And we're going to look at borrowed chords, and we're also going to kind of explore a little bit of other chords that we haven't really touched much on, how suspensions work, augmented chords, things like that, and just experiment with some different chord progressions and see what we get. So I thank you guys for watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Check me out on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search Calvin Wayne Robinson. You can go there, find tabs. You can find these lessons that I've done as well, or links to these lessons. But you can find tabs for my arpeggios lesson and the recent A minor hybrid pick lick that I did. So be sure to check those out. And yeah, thank you.